Hi, my name is Alexis Gare, and from my U.S. History Research Project, I will be doing a presentation on Susan King Taylor. The reason why I chose to do my presentation on Miss Taylor is because I feel like history classes tend to focus on the same big names like Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and so we don't really get to see anybody else or learn about anybody else just because we're always so crunched for time and we just don't have the time and opportunity to. So I wanted to use this project as a way to educate myself and to learn about other African American women who have made contributions to history and they just weren't able to talk about during history classes, which is how I landed on Susan King Taylor. So with that said, Susan King Taylor was originally born Susan Baker, and she was born on August 6, 1848, and she died on October 6, 1912. She was born into slavery on a plantation in Liberty County, Georgia, which isn't far from Savannah, Georgia. And as a result, similar to other African American kids during this time period, she wasn't allowed to receive a formal education. So to receive an education, what she did was she enrolled into two separate underground education programs, which was taught by black women, two black women, and that is how she got her basic education. Past that, she had two white friends who taught her what they knew, which is how her education grew. At a young age, she was always strong in her education, and she always had an idea that she would be using her education to help other people, other African Americans. And that became apparent because when she was no older than the age of 13, she was creating passes for other African Americans, so that way they wouldn't get stopped by people who white people who were checking passes. And so that's where her story started on how she used her education to help others. In April 1862, she gained the attention of Army officers because they noticed her education and what she was doing. So they offered to get her books if she would organize a school, which she did. She organized a school which taught 40 children during the day, and then at night she would teach adults, which is how she became the first black teacher, the first freed black teacher to organize a school in the state of Georgia. And then she also taught soldiers in the war. So during the Civil War, she enrolled, and similar to everybody else, she did not have an understanding of nursing. She was learning on the job, but what she did know was education. So while she was treating the wounded soldiers, she was also giving them a formal education. So that way, when they returned home, they had some form of education that they did not have when she was going in, despite not getting paid for it. That was something she did because she wanted to. Let's see. So Miss Taylor, she was the first in three different fields, or three different things. She was the first African American teacher in the state of Georgia. She was the first African American to self-publish a memoir, and then she was also the first African American nurse. After her time in the Army ended, she and her husband, they moved back to Georgia, and she attempted to open 3 schools for African American children and adults. And the reason why I say attempted is because she was trying to open a private school, and during this time period, and a public school opened up, which overshadowed her school. So her school became unsuccessful. Towards the end of her life, She still focused on teaching. However, as her husband got older and he got sick, she started to focus more on her and then focus more on him. And then when he passed, she went back to being a domestic house servant, and she did that until she died in 1912, which ends my presentation. It wasn't a long one, but also because of this presentation, I know so much more. Before this presentation, I didn't know anything about Susan King Taylor, nor have I ever heard the name before. So I feel like, especially because I went to school in Georgia, it's a shame that I'm just now finding out about her, because I figure she should have came up during this time, because she was the first African American teacher, like I said, so she should have at the very least been mentioned when we were doing Georgia history and things like that. But yeah, that is the end of my presentation.